Hey folks, well, been busy again, done more work on the project today, done quite a few things actually, done the indicators. As you can see, the indicators, the back indicators are now on, front indicators are also on. Front indicators are mounted on the radiator. Basically made up these pieces of aluminium, these brackets out of plate aluminium, cut it out with tin snips, filed it, drilled a hole for the indicator, drilled a hole to attach the bracket to the radiator. The radiator for some reason has holes up here. I don't know what, don't know what they're actually for. I think they're probably like, I don't know, to attach bodywork to the radiator, or I don't know, whatever. There's a couple of holes there and they're a perfect fit for these bolts. I think they're like M6 or M8 bolts or something, I don't know, but the bolts I had were a bit too long, so I just put these spacers in. I had some spacers that came with their rear sets that didn't fit, so just attached them to the radiator, put those on. They've still got to be wired in actually. I've not wired them in, but I'll wire them in when I do the rest of the electrics, put the battery in and all that type of thing. That side's kind of same idea, it's a slightly different. I had to put this one a little bit lower because of the filler cap. It wouldn't fit quite level with the other ones, so the indicators are not quite level, one's higher than the other, which is not ideal, but never mind, it's the way it had to go. I can always move them at a later time if I decide you know, if I'm kind of getting a bike really sorted out cosmetically, you know, but just to get it through the MOT, that's kind of sufficient for the time being. So, and the rear ones, I wasn't sure how I was going to fit the rear ones because number plate mount, I think I said this in a previous video, the number plate mount has it's not quite the right number plate mount for this bike. Well, it's the right, maybe the right one for the bike, but it's not the right one for the seat unit. Well, anyway, I couldn't use the brackets to attach to the indicators on, so directly onto the number plate mount. So what I've done is I made some more aluminium brackets, bolted them into the subframe, and basically they kind of stick out the back. And I've bolted the indicators in sort of more or less where they would be on a standard bike really. So I've now got indicators, rear light and number plate. There's actually a reflector under there as well. I've covered my number plate with leather. There's a bit of, well, it's actually a bit of reflective tape that I just cut out to use as a reflector. So that's kind of the sort of bits and pieces I need for the MOT, you know, to get it legal. I've also done the rear brake. So that's the rear brake hose. When I bought the rear sets included a master cylinder and also a braided brake line. So I've used the braided brake line rather than the original one. So that's bolted onto the front there with new crush washers, and onto the back with a new banjo. In fact, they're all new banjo bolts and new crush washers that I've used in a braided brake line. So it's pretty decent setup. I've not really cut too many corners there. Brakes have been filled and bled, and they work pretty well. They seem to work pretty well as far as I can tell. Kind of, they're not too spongy. I managed to. A rear brake's pretty easy to bleed compared to a front brake because it's only one caliper. So I had it bled pretty quickly, and you can see that when you press. Again, it's too dark really to see on the video, but the pads are pressed against the disc. You can kind of see them kind of squeeze the disc when you press the brake lever, so I'm quite happy with that. So that's the rear brake done. I'd already done the front brakes, that's all the brakes done now. So I've also painted the, just going to take this off, painted the well, drilled and painted the rear tank mount. That's the rear tank mount there. Again, it probably doesn't show up too well in the video, but I think I showed this in the previous video before it was painted. So I drilled it out underneath so it goes down on top of that lug. It's not actually bolted in place yet, I've still got bolted in place. Paint's still a wee bit tacky, so I've just basically kind of sat it in place. So that's gonna, yeah, again, I don't know if you can see in the video, but there's a hole there that I'm going to bolt the tank onto. The tank's slightly off to one side at the moment, but when I bolt it all together I'll get that correct. So that's the tank mount. That's pretty much done, just needs bolting in place. That's good. And then this is the battery box. Let's see if I can reach this out of here. This is, I've painted this as well. Again, I showed this in the previous video. This has now been painted. Painted it black. You can kind of, because it's brush painted, it kind of looks a bit imperfect. Obviously it's kind of DIY welded and DIY painted. It's not really a professional standard, if I'm honest, but I mean the thing is, it's just a battery box, you know. It's going to be away inside the bike, so you're not really going to see it. It's just basically something to just, you know, freshen it up a bit, kind of thing. So I've also glued on this stuff here. This is gasket rubber. Glued that on over this side and that corner. The reason for that is to stop the positive lead from shorting onto the battery box, because the battery box is made of steel and the positive terminal is going to be in this corner. So basically, because it's got rubber covering that, hopefully it shouldn't short circuit. That's the idea. And then I've drilled holes in the bottom and I'm going to clamp it. I've cut out this piece of aluminium and drilled it, and basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to clamp it down on top of the chassis rail. See if I can show you what I mean. See, it's difficult to do it with one hand, but there's a chassis rail down there, and the idea is to put it down on top of that chassis rail and then bolt clamps on either side of it. Bolt clamp underneath it and put the bolts in to secure it. And then I've drilled a couple of holes in the side there, and the plan is to bolt them onto the back of the tank mount. The tank mount has corresponding holes. Again, you can't really see it because it's painted black and it's kind of too dark in here, but there's a couple of holes basically sort of there and there that correspond to the battery box. So the idea is bolt the battery box onto the back of the tank mount, and that'll they'll kind of to some extent help to secure each other, you know, like the tank mount will be made more stable by the fact that it's bolted onto the battery box as well as onto the subframe, and vice versa. That's kind of the idea. So that's that. So that's pretty much it really. In terms of what I've still got to do, I've still got to obviously install the battery box. I've got to put the battery in, wire the battery up. I've got to do bits and pieces of electrics like wiring in the indicators and stuff. And I have to fit the headlights. I have to fit the bottom in the tank. I'm getting a seal and a banjo bolt to connect the tank up. I'll maybe make a video at some point through the week about that. So it's basically kind of finish the fuel system, finish the electrics, put the headlights on. That's pretty much it, to be honest. It's pretty much all done apart from that. I did the throttle, can't remember if I mentioned in the previous video, but the throttle's now installed as well. See, both the throttle cables are running connected to the carburetors. And that throttle seems to work fine, the action seems to be fine. I'll put the grip on, I've still got to put that mirror on. There's little odds and ends like, you know, mirror and headlights and all that, and I suppose the clocks. To be fair, there are still some bits and pieces to be done, but I think probably about a week sometime between a week and 2 weeks I can probably get it in for an MOT. So I'd say probably like the middle of November I'll probably get it in for the MOT test, which is pretty good really, because that's kind of where I've been aiming for quite a few weeks. So if I can get it in and get it MOT'd, once it's got an MOT on it, then it's really just finish the bits and pieces, you know. Just kind of like do the cosmetic stuff, paint the bodywork and just tidy it up, and you know, which is amazing, because originally I'd set out to do this project for March, so I'm kind of months ahead, you know, so that's great. But anyway, I'll try and put another video, try and put another 1-2 videos up through the week, so check back sometime through the week and hopefully there'll be something new. Thanks for watching.